So this is a warrior build that I've covered before, but I feel that it's performing better after the patch, obviously because a lot of the other power creep classes got nerfed, and this didn't really get nerfed that much. So here is the Forum Warrior. Now it's called the Forum Warrior because you'll be making a lot of noise with your shouts and your warhorn, but unlike a Forum Warrior, you'll actually be useful to your team. So I take the Sage Amulet with Rune of the Soldier. This is a Condi build, so having condition damage is pretty good, but I don't take Rabid because you do heal your team quite a bit, so I like the healing power from Sages. And it also gives you some power, which is pretty nice. You'll see why later. And Rune of the Soldier gives one condition cleanse to each ally that is affected by your shouts. So 2 count recharge on the shouts here, and then my heal skill is also a shout, so that gives out quite a bit of Condi cleanse. And with my warhorn, that'll cleanse a lot of conditions. So if this feels like a Condi meta to you and you don't like Condis, this is a really good build for you. I take Sigil of Smoldering and Doom on my bow. That should be because I want to increase my burn damage on my bow. That's the main Condi on my bow. And Doom is a really nice cover Condi, and there's really no other way to get poison with Warrior, so it's just nice. On the sword Warhorn, I take Energy and Intelligence. So Intelligence is just good for making combos, so when you swap out of your, say you're in combat here, and I can cast my Arcing Arrow and then swap to sword, and it will crit because it'll be midair when I get the intel sigil. So what you can do is a lot of times you swap out of your Arcing Arrow, and then you do like a huge burst combo. So something like this, like you can emote them, and then you get the crit on that, and then you can final thrust as well, which would also crit. So you can do a lot of power burst damage because you're a Sage Amulet with the intel sigil. So that's why I like that. And just having energy is really nice, but you could also take cleansing instead of intel or instead of energy if you feel like you want to counter Condis more. But I feel like this build has plenty of Condi cleanse already, with Brawler's recovery as well. Every time you swap weapons, which is a 5-second cooldown, you will get 1 Condi cleanse. If you want to get 2 Condi cleanse when you go to your sword, then yeah, that would be really good. But I think it's enough anyways. So moving on to the traits, obviously you want to be taking Discipline with pretty much every warrior build. So yeah, you just gain adrenaline on weapon swap. You want to be weapon swapping like all the time, so you'll be gaining a lot of adrenaline because of that. Crack Shot gives you burning on your auto attack on your bow. So as you can see here, it is a 1-second burn on each hit, but you hit twice, right? Every auto attack. So it does pretty good damage just auto attacking from range. Like I do 400 damage from the bow attacks, and then like I'm upkeeping like a 600 tick of burn. So it's pretty decent for, you know, just poking people from afar. And Warrior Sprint, I feel, isn't that necessary because you have the immobilize removal from the charge ability, right? So you're not really losing that much. And you also have swiftness, so you don't really need Warrior Sprint, so it allows you to get more damage from Crack Shot. Fast Hands obviously is amazing. Brawler's Recovery, we already talked about, it's really amazing. You gain Might on weapon swap as well, and burst skills gain reduced recharge, which isn't really that big of an issue because with Berserk skills you kind of have to wait anyways a bit to kind of line them up. But the Might is pretty nice because it gives you damage and a little bit of healing, which is nice sustained because of the tactics line. So Burst Mastery, it gives you swiftness, which is nice. It adds to your swiftness uptime from your Warhorn. But the main thing is you want to restore adrenaline whenever you use your your burst skills. So because this is a Berserker build, what you'll be doing is you'll be going into Berserk mode, and then you'll want to use a lot of your burst. So like I'll do this, and then I'll gain like a lot of my adrenaline back, and then I can use my next burst, and then it starts at like 3 out of 10, right? So it allows me to use more bursts per Berserk mode because of the return on it, right? So you gain 33, so that's like 3 adrenaline, and I need 10 adrenaline to use a burst, so I gain like 5 adrenaline. Yeah, I gain 5 adrenaline from Versatile Rage. So if I use a burst skill, I'll get refunded 3, and then if I weapon swap to my next skill, it'll give me 5. So I only really need to hit twice to gain enough to use my next burst skill. So yeah, it just the discipline line gives you a lot of that burst that you need for the Berserker trait line. Tactics. Whenever I land a Berserk skill or a burst skill, it will give out might to my allies, which is nice because that heals me. So this AoE will heal me if I'm with allies, for every ally that I give might to. Also, the Warhorn trait is insanely good because whenever I use one of my Warhorn skills, it'll give them an extra effect. So it gives Fury on my charge skill. This skill is pretty loaded now, so it gives Fury to my allies. Swiftness, it gives a charge effect, which is a 2 stack of 10% damage on your next 2 abilities, which is really good for if you're playing with like power DPS classes. And this is especially good if you're playing 2s, because in 2s you want to diversify your damage, right? So if I'm playing a Condi build, I want to play with a power class, and I can give charge to my ally, and they're going to probably be a power class, right? So it'll give them extra damage every so often, like 15-second cooldown. It'll remove all movement inhibiting Condis, and it's also a blast finisher. So yeah, the Warhorn skills, they do a lot. And also with the trait, you'll get resistance on your Call of Valor for 2 seconds. So giving out AoE resistance in team fights is pretty insane. It also gives barrier, baseline, and vigor to your team, and it removes 2 Condis. So this is a really good skill for just being immune to Condis. Gives you the resistance to Condi cleanse, and the vigor is actually pretty insane too. It's also a blast, and the barrier is just insane too, like 3,000. It's really good. So yeah, this is, the trait itself doesn't add too much to your Warhorn skills, right? The Warhorn skills are already really good, but adding more is really good as well. Deal increased damage for every boon on you, not too important. Shake it off. This is actually a shout passive, so it'll heal you and your allies, and it'll stun break you. So that sometimes becomes relevant, but it's only a single Condi cleanse, and with the Rune of the Soldier, it'll become a double Condi cleanse. So that's pretty okay. Obviously, Mending Might will give you more sustain for supporting your allies, and Vigorous Shouts is what gives your shouts the healing, and it also gives you healing power based on your power, which is also why Sage's Amulet is good, because you'll gain more healing power with this amulet. And it also reduces the recharge of all your shouts, so this is just kind of mandatory for this build. In Berserker, I take Savage Instinct, mainly for the stun break. The 1 second Endure Pain can be sort of good, because after you stun break something, you'll want to probably prevent damage. So a lot of times what you do is you'll use Savage Instinct, and then you'll just immediately go into your burst skill. And if people are trying to pressure you, you'll ignore their immediate damage, and then you'll hit them back with a burst skill. So that, I feel like that's pretty good. And just the stun break allows you to save your Shake It Off for the Condi cleanse rather than using it as a stun break for yourself. So this kind of like selfish trait allows you to be less selfish with Shake It Off. And Smash Brawler is kind of an okay trait as well, because it increases the time that you're in Berserk mode. So it allows you to get off more of your primal bursts but the kind of like the rotation of this build doesn't last long enough to want more of that anyways, because you want to be using your Warhorn skills off cooldown. So what you'll do is you'll like use your Warhorn skills, go Berserk, do all that, and then swap to Longbow, do all that, maybe swap back, and then by then you're out of your Berserk mode and you want to be like supporting your team with your Warhorn again. And if you're in Berserk, you kind of don't want to be using your Warhorn skills, because then you're losing time that you could be using your Berserk skills. So this feels like just a loss of time anyways. So yeah, I just get more value from Savage Instinct, and it just makes you harder to focus, which is good because this build can get locked down sometimes. Burst of Aggression is nice because the quickness and super speed when you go into Berserk mode, kind of like Savage Instinct, gives you that huge momentum shift. So that's just nice. Dead or Alive is really the only thing you can take here. This trait, I'm not using a torch, and this is a power trait, so the only thing you really get value from is the Dead or Alive trait. And this is sort of like a rebound for yourself. Whenever you basically die in Berserk mode, it'll basically heal you for 5,000 and prevent that damage. It also gives you a 10% healing increase to yourself, so it just allows you to be more survivable and have more sustain, so it's pretty nice. Fatal Frenzy gives you 300 power and 300 condition damage, but minus 300 toughness while in Berserk mode. But Eternal Champion gives you that toughness back, so you're not like really easy to focus while you're in Berserk mode, and it allows you to get the stability when you stun break, which has a pretty decent synergy with Savage Instinct, and the might isn't really that big of a deal. So for the utilities, I take To the Limit because it's a pretty decent heal because of Vigorous Shouts, the cooldown reduction and the healing that it gives my allies, but it also gives 30 adrenaline. So say the fight starts, right, and I want to get into Berserk mode as fast as possible. It takes some time to build up your adrenaline. You're only gaining like 5 every weapon swap, and then people have to hit you and you have to hit them, and people are dodging. So this just allows you to get max adrenaline as soon as possible. So you just get in combat, use To the Limit. If you know you're not going to need your heal very soon, yeah, you can just do that and use your heal aggressively. And that kind of makes this build into a more of a roamer too, because you have the flexibility to either save your heal for defensive or aggressive potential. So that's really nice, and then you'll immediately be able to go into your Berserk mode. You can also do it while you're in Berserk mode, but I prefer to use it while I'm out of Berserk mode because there's more adrenaline to gain. Also, it gives you 100 endurance, so you can double dodge, use To the Limit, double dodge again. You can weapon swap with the energy sigil and maybe do that 5th dodge somewhere in there. So it just gives you a ton of survivability, and it also gives endurance to your allies. So yeah, it's just really insane in team fights because it's a 600 radius that it does that. So that's like, dodges just give you so much survivability. So giving dodges to your allies is just good. Shake It Off, this is a no-brainer. It's a shout, it's a Condi cleanse, and it's a stun break. You want this. For Great Justice, same thing. It's a shout. It gives your allies fury and a lot of might. So in combination with charge, you have quite a bit of fury for your allies. So it does fill that aggressive support role where you can make your allies do a lot more damage. And it's just very spammable, so it gives you a lot of synergy with shout, heals, and Condi cleanse. Next you have Wild Blow. This is a little bit more tentative of a utility. I like it because it gives you some hard CC. There's no other hard CC in the build. So it allows you to prevent a lot of reses, because what it does is it knocks the body. So like if someone's in down state, you can actually knock the body. And what it'll do is Wild Blow will knock anyone that you knock the target into away as well. So as you can see there, I knocked this one with this. So it just creates a lot of havoc in team fights. And overall, it allows you to land a lot of your burst combos even if you're not making those plays. So if I go into my longbow, what I can do is I can immobilize them, and then from there I can land my wild blow, and then while they're in the knockdown, I'll use my berserk burst with the longbow, and they'll be sitting in the fire field, and you can do a lot of stuff with it. So it's really nice. Also, you can sort of like peel for yourself in a way. So I've tried out a lot of different utilities, and if you use something like Shattering Blow, this only saves you a little bit of time because you stop moving when you use it, and it's a short block. It doesn't really help you to kite or get you any closer to being, to an escape. Whereas if you land a really good wild blow, you'll get them off your tail very, very decidedly, right? Because it's such a long CC and it creates distance. So it's kind of difficult to land. So for this reason, I have tried out Bull's Charge as well. Bull's Charge has sort of a similar effect. It has a lot better sustain for yourself, right? Because it's an evade and a movement skill. So that's really nice. But it also has a 3-second knockdown on the target that you hit. It is a longer cooldown than Wild Blow, and it does provide less CC, but it's definitely a lot easier to land. So this is probably better for people who feel like they're not getting that much value from Wild Blow. And yeah, it's probably more reliable, let's be honest. But I like Wild Blow because say you're in like a situation where the enemy team has too much res potential, Bull's Charge isn't going to do anything about that. Like, it's going to stun one person and then they're just going to keep resing. Knocking the body away, though, prevents everything that they're about to do to the body. It can remove them from blood wells that are resing them. It can just do a lot. So while this maybe isn't the most reliable skill, it does have high playmaking potential. So I really like it for that. And then next you have Battle Standard. This is just kind of like the same idea. You want to prevent people from resing. This is a stomp mechanic and a res mechanic. So you want to use it as a stomp before you use it as a res, obviously, because that gets you the rally. But it's kind of interesting because there's two circles here, as you can see. So the outer ring is the res, and the inner ring is the stomp. Obviously, if they're in the inner, it'll res as well, but it's kind of hard to land the stomp sometimes because the inner ring is shorter range than the outer, obviously, and yeah, it's just smaller. So you got to be careful with that. You can also be blinded, or they can block the stomp from the battle standard. The res cannot. So if there's a situation where the res can be done for sure, but the stomp might be ageist or something like that, you might want to go for the res instead. And obviously it is a battle standard, so you can get boon from it by standing near it in the middle of a fight. You usually want to leave this down. It lasts for a minute before it goes away, and you want to pick it up before then because it will reduce the cooldown by a full minute as well. So that's really nice to remember to pick it up. Obviously, if you don't leave it down and you just pick it up immediately, you're only preventing your team from getting a bit of fury, might, and swiftness. But those are all pretty nice, so yeah, it's pretty good. Also, it does like 800 base damage, so it can do some pretty decent damage in a team fight. But obviously, you wouldn't use it just for damage. Let's see here. So we went over all that. Now we want to go over the gameplay or the play style. So you go into a fight. At the start of the match, you'll probably give your teammates swiftness before they go in. Charge for 8 seconds. They can, do their opener burst. They've got fury. You want to go in with your longbow, probably open up with to the limit. You'll do your longbow burst from afar, maybe try to immob them in that. you'll longbow 3 and then swap and then do your final thrust to get the kind of like crit combo going there that I've showed before, and then you'll flaming flurry, and then from that point your team might need support, so you'll use Call of Valor, and then you can swap back to longbow. So the longbow skills without the berserk skill are pretty strong. The auto attack, as I showed before, does a burning on each hit, and the 2 skill is a piercing fan effect that does more damage the closer you are, because it fans out too soon if you're too far away. And this does 3 stacks of burn for 6 seconds, so it's a really big hit. Look at, it's 800 tick for 6 seconds, so that if they don't cleanse it, they're going to take a lot of damage. So this skill is really important to play around. You want to use it in melee range to get the maximum effect. So what you do is sometimes you'll go in and you'll use your sword too, and then you'll immediately swap to longbow and use your 2 skill in melee range, and that will give you the maximum burst. And the 3 skill, as I showed before, is a power. It's a pretty high power coefficient to it. With your intel sigil, it'll hit pretty hard. It's also a blast finisher, so it's just good to use in team fights. Smoldering Arrow is pretty important as well, because it's a 3 count recharge ability, so you can blind quite a bit with this, and you just want to weave that in and kind of like cover condies with it. So what you'll do is you'll like go and do your Fan of Fire and then cover it with the blind, and yeah, just overall it has a lot of aggressive potential because you kind of prevent them from reacting to you and you can be aggressive. But it's also really nice if you're getting chased, because the longbow doesn't really have much defensive potential on it. So what you can do is, like, if you're getting chased, you can like jump and turn around real quick and use your 4 at them. You have to be on the ground though to use it, so like you'd have to like pre-cast the cast and then jump, and yeah, then you can just keep kiting from there, and you have 3 casts on it, so you can blind in quick succession for a pretty decent survivability until you get to your sword, right? And then you can start kiting again with your sword, which is a lot more survivability on it. So next is the pin down. This does a 6 bleed and 3 second immobilize. You don't want to just throw this out willy-nilly. You want to land this. So oftentimes what you'll do is you'll, like, max range, it's really hard to land even though it's really far. Like if they're moving in your max range, you're not going to land it. You want to be a little bit closer to land it, and preferably you want to bait out some dodges as well. So what you'll do is you'll throw out the arcing arrow, and you probably don't want to throw out the arcing arrow, to be honest. You might want to save that for the swap, but you'll blind them a little bit. Maybe they'll dodge. Right after they dodge, you do want to hit the pin down, and then from there you want to do your burst and then go in there. You can also, in your scorched earth, if you use Smoldering Arrow, that's a burning projectile 100%, so is your pin down. So when you're in the scorched earth, you want to be using your Smoldering Arrow a lot, because it's just adding more to your burns. And yeah, that's pretty much the longbow. In sword, you have your intel sigil procs, so your sword 2 and your sword 3 are your biggest hitters, obviously, because they're your only hitters. But yeah, they have pretty decent damage, and if you crit with them, they're pretty good. But they're kind of hard to land, so you often don't land them. But it is nice if you can combo them with like a wild blow, for example. So like wild blow, obviously it already crits, so you don't want to do that, but you'll do something like wild blow into sword 2 into sword 3, and you can get some decent damage off with that. Savage Leap is also a cripple and a combo finisher leap, so if you have your fire fields down, you can give yourself a fire aura. And Final Thrust is just really good because if they're below 50% HP, it does more damage, so it can crit for like 3k, which is really good for a Condi build, and it'll put an 8 second 6 stack of bleed. So you get quite a bit of damage from this. So yeah, it's pretty nice. And obviously we already talked about the Warhorn skills and the Berserk skills. The Flaming Flurry, it gives you a kind of like a flurry attack, right? And you can do this while not facing the target. So like I can be going backwards, shooting it backwards while running away. So it's really good for kiting. And it also destroys projectiles. So it's really good against rangers. You get up in their face and you destroy the projectiles and prevent them from going in stealth and stuff like that. So yeah, Flaming Flurry is really good, but it doesn't really do as much as the Longbow, because the Longbow it has so many like combos that you can do with the Longbow finisher. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So that's what I run for the 2v2 and Conquest PvP game modes, but this is also a really good World v World build. So what you do for the armor stats for that is you take a mix of Apothecary and Trailblazers. Apothecary gives you some healing power, and Trailblazers gives you some expertise and vitality, depending on whether you want to be with a party more or solo more. You'd go for more Apothecary for more team support, or more Trailblazers for more solo roaming. You'd also not take the Intel Sigils because you don't really have any power, so you'd probably take Cleansing on your sword and energy, and then you'd probably still want Smoldering and Doom for your Longbow, and then obviously you want to still run Trooper runes. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So if you like the video, like the video, and if you want more, of course, subscribe and leave a comment down below if you are a forum warrior yourself and you're going to post this to the forums to advertise me.